Welcome to another edition of my study guide. And yes, I am a complete idiot for doing this voice. Laugh at me at your own expense, or I will kill you. No, I'm joking, so please don't arrest me for saying that. Chapter 5, Interlude, 1958. Ruby and her sisters, along with their cousin Lucy Vida, take a trip to Whitby after the disappearance of their mother Bunty, who has run away from home because she's dissatisfied with her marriage to George and also feels devastated about Pearl's death. There they meet Auntie Doreen, George's mistress, who becomes enshrined in their memories as the only maternal figure of their lives. Characterization. Ruby's confidence and brightness are mostly back in this chapter, and she describes the chapter in her old witty banterish style. However, when she hears the parrot at the window, she says, "These are harmless noises compared with the things trying to get in my window," before she realizes it's the parrot. This echoes Ruby's apocalyptic images in the previous chapter. This chapter shows Bunty in a more vulnerable light, and she's had enough, much like Alice. Ruby says that Bunty has copied her letter from some film, which is a reference to Bunty's daydream about being a film star and she's pregnant with Ruby. Obviously, despite her increased load as a mother, she hasn't given up these dreams and is still obsessed with film, as an escape from her mundane reality. Sensible Patricia is revealed here to actually be quite conniving, writing a note that in a perfect counterfeit of Bunty's handwriting, pretending the dog has died even though they don't have a pet dog, and smugly reminding George, "Auntie Babs is ill, remember?" Patricia is, throughout the book, perfectly, and possibly the only sensible, mature member of the family, until she becomes a teenager, that is, and becomes pregnant. Honestly. Gillian begins to blubber in a very unattractive way. Gillian is once again the baby of the family, almost telling Ruby about the existence of Pearl, which has to be prevented by Patricia, and is getting worked up. Her cheeks have gone that funny mottled pink way, like a trout, when Patricia leaves for school without her. Doreen is as calm and unflappable as the harbour wall when confronted with the high tides of Gillian's emotions. Techniques, man, techniques. Techniques. God, I'm not doing a very good voice there. Italian-American techniques. Walter says, "How's Doreen?" making a peculiar gesture as if he was pushing up a large, invisible bosom. This foreshadows both Doreen's appearance later in the chapter and her status as George's mistress. On a further scale, Ruby says, "Are you running away too, Patricia?" which she does later in the novel after her pregnancy. Patricia tells Gillian, "You lie all the time," perhaps hinting at her suspicion that Pearl's death was Gillian's fault, not Ruby's, which is later proved to be true. Later in the chapter, Ruby finds the locket with 2 tiny photographs of me, although in fact one of them is Pearl. Patricia prevents Gillian from telling Ruby about the existence of Pearl. Patricia later murmurs, "4 of us again," rather mournfully, as they had their cousin Lucy Vida there, although she's clearly talking about Pearl as well. Ruby even says, "We rather like having a 4th sister," which is very ironic, since the existence of the 4th sister and the death of her 4th sister caused all of her emotional trauma. This is not English work, is it? It's not very common in the novel, but Bunty's letter here is a key example of the epistolary technique, revealing her trauma after the death of Pearl. Life has not really been the same since left off, so Ruby doesn't know about Pearl. Mary Poppins is a key character here in regards to the intertextuality. Because of Bunty and George's poor parenting skills, Ruby says that Mary Poppins is a woman we long for, to take over our neglected upbringing. Later, Ruby says that Doreen grew as unreal as Mary Poppins herself. Patricia is also so excited by Whitby, because this is where the Demeter, sailing out of Varna, ended its voyage, a reference to the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker. Ruby also assigns different characters from Little Women to her sisters and Doreen. Ruby uses bathos to describe Patricia's fall from the promenade as a spontaneous suicide attempt, at the same time foreshadowing Patricia's gloomy attitude as a teenager and her own suicide attempt later in the novel when she discovers Pearl's existence. While Ruby usually seems omniscient, she has occasional moments of unreliable childish innocence, such as when she says, "Is Auntie Doreen perhaps a relative of George's?" Atkinson uses parenthesis with an exclamation mark to show Ruby's joy at the tiny rubies in the game they're playing, as this is her name. Themes. Themes. Bunty and the parrot went missing on the same night, and it was only later when they both safely returned that we realised this was a coincidence and Bunty had not run away with the parrot. Ruby languished in such fantasies, intertextuality is used, mentioned in Sinbad and 1001 Nights, to describe even the most ridiculous ideas of a parrot running away with Bunty, in order to escape the very real consequences of Bunty's leaving, as it shows how unhappy she was in marriage, and therefore should be cause for concern. George asks Ruby if she's alright, and Ruby responds by saying, in her mind, she can't imagine what he would do with us if we weren't, meaning that George is clearly a bad parent, and even though Ruby is only a young child, she's perfectly aware of this. This is contrasted with Auntie Doreen's approach, with Ruby saying, the contrast with Bunty is unavoidable. Doreen is held up as one of the most maternal figures in the book, even though she gave her baby away. Both of these things happened to Patricia, the implication being that one can only be maternal if they're not trapped by their own children, and can be maternal towards other people's children. Ruby says, perhaps if Bunty doesn't come back, we can have a new mother. Auntie Doreen for preference, a mother that will remember my name. This chapter's got nothing to do with 6 Feet Under, I just chose the picture because it was nice. Anyway, the entire chapter is about how unhappy George and Bunty's marriage is, causing Bunty to run away. Ruby says, none of us can think of anything that Bunty could write that would make George happy. When George is with Doreen, he throws his head back and laughs and sheds at least 20 years from his back, a line which implies that he's never happy with Bunty and that Doreen provides him far more happiness. On his last meeting with Doreen, George is like a condemned man under tumbril, as he knows that the happiness won't last much longer and will have to return to Bunty. Ruby says about Bunty, she is our living alarm clock. As husbands did not do any domestic housework, the absence of Bunty in this chapter causes not just the 3 girls to be helpless, but even George, after the breakfast-making effort, described as a spirit of cooperation, makes the characters realise how much they need Bunty and her good housekeeping skills, despite her unpleasant personality. How is it that without Bunty we can't do the simplest things like waking up, eating, remembering we're going on holiday? The wallpaper is clean and flowery and has not been impregnated with the reek of family dramas. Ruby and her sister think of the holidays as one of those happy times as a family, away from all the disgusting stuff in their home, which just reminds them of the horrific things from their family history. Not just the death of Pearl, but all those other shit that happens to them. I still can't bring myself to believe that she would willfully abandon her own children. Bunty abandons her children and husband for a week here, which echoes Pip abandoning his guardians throughout Great Expectations. Also, Ruby and Pip find their value through their surrogate mother, which they are attracted to more than their real relation, who is their mother figure. Ruby feels Auntie Doreen is a better mother figure than Bunty, while Pip values Miss Havisham more than he does Miss Jo. But unlike Ruby, Pip is not placing his gratefulness in the right place, as Miss Havisham doesn't even like him. In both The Wife of Bath and Behind the Scenes at the Museum, more happiness is found in infidelity than marriage. George finds happiness with Doreen, whilst The Wife of Bath is happy with apprentice Jankin before she gets married to him, who she says tickleth me about mine heart root. Thank you again. Goodbye.